I'd like to thank also Arundhati Mataji for reaching out and inviting us to come, and all the devotees for your warm welcome. Okay. So, we'll chant.
Mic okay?
Yeah, is it okay? Can everyone hear all right?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll chant Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava
Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Shri Shri Radha Sham Sundar Ki
Jai.
Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki
Jai.
Shri Shri Gauranitai Ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Okay. So today we will be reading from the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the most confidential knowledge. And we were requested to read verse number 11. And so this chapter of Bhagavad Gita is very, very special. Of course, every single word of Bhagavad Gita is very, very special. But this most confidential knowledge, this section, sometimes it's explained that just like how we would keep our most valuable possessions in kind of the inner sanctum of a building. You wouldn't keep it near the front entrance, you wouldn't keep it near the rear entrance. You keep it right in the center where it can be guarded and protected. So sometimes we hear that this 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is just like that. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay. Avajananti Mamudha
Avajananti Mam Mudha
Manushim Tanumashritam
Manushim Tanumashritam
Param Bhavam Ajananto
Param Bhavam Ajananto
Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram
Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram Avajananti Mam Mudha
Avajananti Mamudha
Manushim Tanumashritam
Manushim Tanumashritam
Param Bhavam Ajananto
Param Bhavam Ajananto
Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram
Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram
Avajananti Mamudha
Avajananti Mamudha
Manushim Tanumasritam
Manushim Tanumashritam
Param Bhavam Ajananto
Param Bhavam Ajananto
Bhuta Maheshwaram
Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram
Avajananti Mamudha
Avajananti Mamudha
Manushim Tanumashritam
Manushim Tanumashritam
Param Bhavam
Param
Ajananto
Bhavam Ajananto
Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram
Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram
Avajananti Mamudha
Avajananti Mamudha
Manushim
Manushim
Tanumashritam
Tanumashritam
Param Bhavam Ajananto
Param Bhavam Ajananto
Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram
Okay, thank you all. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. Purport. From the other explanations of the previous verses in this chapter, it is clear that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although appearing like a human being, is not a common man. The personality of Godhead, who conducts the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the complete cosmic manifestation, cannot be a human being. Yet, there are many foolish men who consider Krishna to be merely a powerful man and nothing more. Actually, he is the original Supreme Personality, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna. He is the Supreme Lord. There are many Ishvaras, controllers, and one appears greater than another. In the ordinary management of affairs in the material world, we find some official or director, and above him there is a secretary, and above him a minister, and above him a president. Each of them is a controller, but one is controlled by another. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that Krishna is the supreme controller. There are many controllers, undoubtedly, both in the material and spiritual world, but Krishna is the supreme controller, Ishvara Parama Krishna, and his body is Satchit Ananda, non-material. Material bodies cannot perform the wonderful acts described in previous verses. His body is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. Although he is not a common man, the foolish deride him and consider him to be a man. His body is called here Manushim because he is acting just like a man, a friend of Arjuna's, a politician involved in the battle of Kurukshetra. In so many ways he is acting just like an ordinary man, but actually his body is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, eternal bliss and knowledge absolute. This is confirmed in the Vedic language also, Satchit Ananda Rupaya Krishnaya. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is the eternal, blissful form of knowledge. There are other descriptions in the Vedic language also, Tam Ekam Govindam. You are Govinda, the pleasure of the senses and the cows, Satchit Ananda Vigraham. And your form is transcendental, full of knowledge, bliss, and eternality. Despite the transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna's body, its full bliss and knowledge, there are many so-called scholars and commentators of Bhagavad Gita who deride Krishna as an ordinary man. The scholar may be born an extraordinary man due to his previous good work, but this conception of Sri Krishna is due to a poor fund of knowledge. Therefore he is called Mudha, for only foolish persons consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being. The foolish consider Krishna an ordinary human being because they do not know the confidential activities of the Supreme Lord and his different energies. They do not know that Krishna's body is a symbol of complete knowledge and bliss, that he is the proprietor of everything that be, and that he can award liberation to anyone. Because they do not know that Krishna has so many transcendental qualifications, they deride him. Nor do they know that the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this material world is a manifestation of his internal energy. He is the master of the material energy. As has been explained in several places, Mama Maya Duratyaya, he claims that the material energy, although very powerful, is under his control, and whoever surrenders unto him can get out of the control of this material energy. If a soul surrendered to Krishna can get out of the influence of material energy, then how can the Supreme Lord, who conducts the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the whole cosmic nature, have a material body like us? So this conception of Krishna is complete foolishness. Foolish persons, however, cannot conceive that the personality of Godhead, Krishna, appearing just like an ordinary man, can be the controller of all the atoms and of the gigantic manifestation of the universal form. The biggest and the minutest are beyond their conception, so they cannot imagine that a form like that of a human being can simultaneously control the infinite and the minute. Actually, although he is controlling the infinite and the finite, he is apart from all this manifestation. It is clearly stated concerning his Yogam Aishwaram, his inconceivable transcendental energy, that he can control the infinite and finite simultaneously, and that he can remain aloof from them. Although the foolish cannot imagine how Krishna, who appears just like a human being, can control the infinite and the finite, those who are pure devotees accept this, for they know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, they completely surrender unto him and engage in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Lord. There are many controversies between the impersonalists and the personalists about the Lord's appearance as a human being. But if we consult Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the authoritative texts for understanding the science of Krishna, then we can understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not an ordinary man, although he appeared on this earth as an ordinary human. In the Srimad Bhagavatam first canto, first chapter, when the sages headed by Shaunaka inquired about the activities of Krishna, they said, Kritavan kila karmani saharamena keshavaha ati martyani bhagavan buddha kapata manushaha. Lord Sri Krishna The Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with Balaram, played like a human being, and so masked he performed many superhuman acts. The Lord's appearance as a man bewilders the foolish. No human being could perform the wonderful acts that Krishna performed while he was present on this earth. When Krishna appeared before his father and mother, Vasudeva and Devaki, he appeared with 4 hands, but after the prayers of the parents, he transformed himself into an ordinary child. As stated in the Bhagavatam, Babhuva Prakritaha Shishuhu, he became just like an ordinary child, an ordinary human being. Now here again it is indicated that the Lord's appearance as an ordinary human being is one of the features of his transcendental body. In the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also it is stated that Arjuna prayed to see Krishna's form of 4 hands, Tenaiva Rupena Chaturbhujena. After revealing this form, Krishna, when petitioned by Arjuna, again assumed his original human-like form, Manusham Rupam. These different features of the Supreme Lord are certainly not those of an ordinary human being. Some of those who deride Krishna and who are infected with the Mayavadi philosophy quote the following verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam to prove that Krishna is just an ordinary man. Aham sarveshu bhuteshu bhutatma vastitaha sada. The Supreme is present in every living entity. We should better take note of this particular verse from the Vaishnavacharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur instead of following the interpretation of unauthorized persons who deride Krishna. Jiva Goswami, commenting on this verse, says that Krishna in his plenary expansion as Paramatma is situated in the moving and the non-moving entities as the supersoul. So any neophyte devotee who simply gives his attention to the Archa Murti, the form of the Supreme Lord in the temple, and does not respect other living entities is uselessly worshipping the form of the Lord in the temple. There are 3 kinds of devotees of the Lord, and the neophyte is in the lowest stage. The neophyte devotee gives more attention to the deity in the temple than to other devotees. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur warns that this sort of mentality should be corrected. The devotee should see that because Krishna is present in everyone's heart as Paramatma, every body is the embodiment or the temple of the Supreme Lord. So as one offers respect to the temple of the Lord, he should similarly properly respect each and every body in which the Paramatma dwells. Everyone should therefore be given proper respect and should not be neglected. There are also many impersonalists who deride temple worship. They say that since God is everywhere, why should one restrict himself to temple worship? But if God is everywhere, is he not in the temple or in the deity? Although the personalist and the impersonalist will fight with one another perpetually, a perfect devotee in Krishna consciousness knows that although Krishna is the Supreme Personality, he is all-pervading, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. Although his personal abode is Goloka Vrindavan, and he is always staying there, by his different manifestations of energy and by his plenary expansion, he is present everywhere in all parts of the material and spiritual creation. Om Agyanatimanandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Varijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Shah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deena Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara
Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatidishtarine. Okay. So as we begin, just like to seek everyone's blessings so that we may have an uplifting and meaningful discussion, dialogue, something that can actually give us some inspiration on our spiritual paths, put wind in our sails, as it were, that we can have a discussion that will be pleasing to the soul and also pleasing to our acharyas and Guru Parampara. So, there's very little to be said that has not been so perfectly said in this amazing purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing so many of the different ways in which Krishna is most certainly not an ordinary person. But also, he's examining the ways in which Krishna is a person. See, sometimes we can lose one side or another, right? So that the understanding can be that, oh, Krishna is not an ordinary person, therefore he can't be a person. Right? This is the Mayavad conception. So the other side of that would be Krishna is a personality, so therefore he's just like me. He has problems just like me, so on and so forth. So neither of those conceptions is correct. And what we find at the crux where these two factors meet is actually the Achintya Veda Abheda Tattva that we find in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, as shared by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Krishna is simultaneously one with and different from all of his parts and parcels. So the way that this is explained by Srila Prabhupada is that it's a matter of quality, not quantity. So in other words, that we, in many respects, are same as Krishna in the sense that our soul, our spirit, our truest, deepest self is ultimately comprised of Satchit Ananda, just like Krishna. But we are very small, very, very tiny. So we hear many analogies, of course. The drop of water in the ocean may have the same chemical composition as the full ocean, but at the same time, drop of ocean water does not have the might, the power, the presence of the full ocean. And of course, we know full well where the drop of water is coming from. It's coming from the great ocean. So we have this wonderful Achintya Veda Abheda Tattva, this understanding that really helps us to understand not only Krishna's nature, but also to get some insights into our own nature as we trudge through life trying to figure out who are we, what's our purpose, so on and so forth. So there are so many brilliant commentaries that Srila Prabhupada gives and our acharyas give that elucidate how we get to know Krishna and also how we get to understand ourselves in the process. We hear the term self-realization. We also hear the term God realization. So we can say that these go hand in hand. Not that they're the same, because as we just established, we are not the same as Krishna. But by the same token, as we get to know Krishna, we get to learn more about ourselves as his parts and parcels. And simultaneously, as we get to understand more about our true spiritual nature, it gives us insights into who Krishna is for us and how we can serve him, how we can try to come to know him. So, Krishna is a personality, but he is not an ordinary personality. We understand that Krishna is full in 6 opulences. And so those opulences are fame, strength, renunciation, beauty, wealth, and knowledge. I hope I didn't, sometimes when we go through these lists, we kind of repeat certain things. So anyway, yeah, so those are the six opulences of Krishna, and he has those opulences completely in full. And it's explained that even other incarnations, other forms in which Krishna comes to this world, may not be completely full. So Krishna has certain opulences that none of the other incarnations possess. And any beauty, any good qualities that we see in others, in those in our communities, in those we interact with, even in those with whom we don't have a particular relationship, we know that their qualities are emanating from Krishna's opulences. They may have a very small sliver of Krishna's opulences. Just as all of the beauty in this material world, anything beautiful, splendors that we see, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that it's all but a spark of his splendor. So anything beautiful that we perceive in this world is coming from the spiritual world, ultimately. So also on the level of persons, we can say that any good qualities that we observe in persons around us, or that we are fortunate to be gifted by Krishna, is ultimately coming from none other than Krishna. And in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining the beauty of getting to know Krishna as a person. So Krishna in Bhagavad Gita reveals himself in many ways to Arjuna. He explains in so many ways, I am the ability in man, right? I am the heat of fire. I am the fragrance of the earth. I'm the life of all that lives. So these are kind of indirect, we can say, ways of seeing who Krishna is. Completely true, but these are expanded examples of Krishna's energy and presence. But he also shares so much about who he is to Arjuna, what pleases him, what kinds of relationships he appreciates, that if one offers him a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water with love and devotion, he will accept it. So we're getting very personal insights into who Krishna is as well. And also we understand that Krishna already has a relationship with Arjuna. They have a friendly relationship for which Arjuna finds himself apologizing when he sees in full who Krishna is, and he accepts Krishna as his guru, as his guide, as his Lord. So in this way, Arjuna is apologizing. But Krishna allows himself to be known to the devotees, and he says, I am impartial, I do not favor anyone. But then in the very same verse, he says, but, he makes an exception actually in the very same verse. He says, I am impartial, but one who worships me with love and devotion. And I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure many of the devotees here know the exact wording of this. But he says that one who is worshiping him with their heart, they are especially dear to him. So yes, Krishna is impartial, but he also has his relationships, his connections, special favor toward those who are striving to be his devotees. So how do we get to know Krishna? Krishna can be the Virat Rupa, he can be the universal form, and Arjuna says, no, my Lord, please go back. And then Krishna appears in his four-armed form, Chaturbhuj, and then he appears in his original, his peaceful, Somyam, Swayam Bhagavan form. It's very interesting when we think about the fact that the universal form is an expansion of Krishna. Not that Shamsundar Krishna is some kind of expansion from the Virat Rupa. No, not like that. We may, initially think in that way because the Virat Rupa is so vast and so great and all-encompassing. But we see that Srila Prabhupada says actually that the Virat Rupa is not necessarily a form that devotees are attracted to. But it is a beautiful way in which Krishna reveals to Arjuna that everything is contained within him. And he's present in every circumstance. But when he returns to that original form, Arjuna finds bliss and peace in his heart. So it's that Krishna, that original Swayam Bhagavan form of Krishna that we are striving to understand and hear about and become attracted to and offer our hearts to. So how do we come to know Krishna? There are many ways. So Srila Prabhupada explains to us in 9 processes of bhakti. And beginning with Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. So by hearing, chanting, remembering about Krishna, we have the opportunity to really come to understand so many wonderful details about him. It's incredible, really incredible. We were just looking at Srimad Bhagavatam recently in the 10th canto, chapter number 20. It's explaining not only Krishna's qualities, but it actually goes into deeply into what the rainy season and what the autumn are like in Vrindavan. So that this Prabhupada rendered this into a beautiful book called Light of the Bhagavat. So it's just incredible in the Shastra how many details are there to know every little bit about what Krishna's days are like, what his relationships are like, so many varieties of relationship that he has with the Brajvasis. And that Krishna, what it's like, where he is, right? We get to understand more about his abode and where he performs his pastimes. And Krishna performs his pastimes to enchant our hearts and minds. Of course, he has his own internal reasons too, because he enjoys having these various loving exchanges with his devotees. But also by engaging in these pastimes, we have the opportunity to become more and more drawn into the reality of his full being. Not that Krishna is, how can we say that? Krishna is really simplified in our mind. Yes, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, right? If we don't get into those nice details that have been so generously given by Srila Prabhupada through his books, we may take more interest in just kind of everyday life, right? Because I can go to the grocery store and I can talk to the cashier in the grocery store and learn a lot about that person. And if I can only know about God, that God is great, God is good, God is mighty, I may take more interest in learning the details about those I can learn about. But the good news is actually that we don't have to choose. We don't have to choose because we have the wonderful Vaishnavas, we have the wonderful devotees. And by getting to know the devotees, we're also engaging in sadhu sangha, and that's going to bring us ever closer to Krishna as well. And Krishna is pleased when we serve the devotees, when we have loving exchanges with the devotees. So in this way, sadhu sangha is only going to bring us ever closer to Krishna. And and I just wanted to ask quickly, I'm sorry, I want to be conscious of the time. Does anyone have the time? And
6:27 now.
6:27? We generally go till 6:30, is that right?
Yeah, but we started 10 minutes late, so you can go on.
Okay, so I'll just share one point here that so it's a great mistake to consider Krishna to be an ordinary man. This is clear. Srila Prabhupada is enunciating this, and Krishna himself is enunciating this. But sometimes we may also kind of, just something I was reflecting on, sometimes we may do the opposite with our own selves. So it's an offense to think of Krishna as an ordinary person, but also sometimes we think of ourselves as transcendental. Once we come in contact with the spiritual path, somehow or other, we read some books and receive some beautiful ideas from the acharyas, from Srila Prabhupada. We may be engaged in spiritual practice, and we may prematurely try to kind of transcend our everyday, human follies, right? So, in this sense, it's very important that as we aspire for transcendence, that we also acknowledge our humanity, we also acknowledge our faults, our conditioning, how far we may feel that we need to go in spiritual life. And in this way, actually, we can offer our full self to Krishna even more. Because Krishna doesn't only want to see the ways in which we're doing right. Krishna doesn't only want to see, yes, I completed my rounds today, or so on and so forth. Of course, Krishna does want to see that. Krishna is extremely pleased and indebted, actually, he says, to those who serve him. But at the same time, we want to offer our full self to Krishna. That we can say, Krishna, yes, I'm struggling with this, or this is still hard for me, or I'm still attached to this and that. And in this way, actually, we're revealing our full self to Krishna. I mean, I'm sure we can all understand that when we have deep friendships, you don't just talk about the good things that happen, right? You talk about your struggles and your challenges. So why can't we do that with Krishna too? Krishna wants to know our full hearts. And this is where the process of bhakti known as vandanam comes in, where we can offer prayers to Krishna. And of course we have so many beautiful prayers given by our acharyas that we can repeat. And those are very, very bona fide prayers. But at the same time, it's clear that it's all right to offer your own personal prayers and to share what's happening in your life with Guru and Krishna. And in this way, we're offering our full self. Krishna likes variety. Krishna wants to get to know each and every one of us, because in the spiritual world, that's how it is, that Krishna is engaged in so many individual connections with all of his devotees, all of his parts and parcels, whatever form they may take, whatever mood in which they may connect with him. So in this way, we try to share anything and everything that we can with Krishna, and not to kind of prematurely jump and say, okay, well, I'm all set, no more, human issues for me. So in this way, we understand that Krishna is fully transcendental, is free from any human frailty, is not an ordinary human being, but at the same time, we can acknowledge that, I'll speak for myself because you're all wonderful souls, wonderful devotees, but we can acknowledge that we are still very much human, and we wish to offer whatever circumstance. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, whatever austerities you perform, please do that as an offering to me. So our austerities, our challenges are also very dear to Krishna, and we can offer those to him in an honest mood, in a mood of seeking mercy and seeking service. So Krishna is making very clear here that he is not ordinary, but he also cares for us, and as his parts and parcels, we are gradually seeking to uncover our connection and relationship with him. And we do that through the mercy of the devotees and through hearing, chanting, and remembering him. In Nectar of Instruction, Upadeshamrita, Rupa Goswami has a verse, Syat Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitapya Vidya Pito Patapta Rasanasya Narochikanu Kintvadarat Anudinam Kalu Saiva Justa Swadvikramad Bhavati Tadkaramula Hantri. That one's tongue can be afflicted with the jaundice of ignorance, avidya, but by carefully chanting Krishna's names, sweet names, each day, that ignorance is gradually destroyed at the root, and our taste for the sweetness of Krishna's name will be awakened. So in this way, it's a marathon. Spiritual life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Although Prabhupada said that actually one can become a pure devotee in 1 second if they're sincere. There's an astounding answer in one of his lectures. Someone says, how long does it take to become purely Krishna conscious? He says, 1 second. But that's a very rare circumstance. So meanwhile, we just try to endeavor with patience, with confidence, with enthusiasm. So thank you all so much. I'll stop here. I'm just very eager to hear any thoughts, reflections. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji.
I have a comment and a question. In my own limited experience in trying to preach and to have people understand that Krishna can have a form that looks human-like, but is not. I use the example, I say if a Martian lands on Fifth Avenue and he looks in the Saks Fifth Avenue store window and he looks at the people walking on the street, he'll think, oh, the mannequin and the people, they're just the same. But they're actually very different. Here's my question, or my request. In the purport, as you were reading, the point was made that if we surrender to the Lord, then the modes of nature, material energy, no longer affect us. So I'm not surrendered, but there are a lot of wonderfully surrendered devotees here. But somehow the modes of nature are still affecting us. So my question is, can you speak in a general way of those things that we're not always aware of that are obstacles to our surrender?
Sure. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you for that example. I like the Martian example a lot. And then so to address your wonderful question. Yeah, kind of unspoken, unclear obstacles on the path. Sure. So, well, first of all, we have the four defects that we often hear about. Imperfect senses. Imperfect senses, propensity to make mistakes, fault-finding tendency, and the tendency to be illusioned. So these things can always stand in the way of our perception, no matter how much mercy we are receiving in the form of transcendental knowledge. We can still be grappling with these four defects, which are inherent to our lives in this material world. But also, sometimes there are obstacles that can come up in the context of devotional service. So even if one is completely surrendered, if one is completely surrendered, those problems won't be there. But if one is really completely trying to surrender, there can still be issues. So we can find that our false ego can grab onto so many things in spiritual life. Spiritual life is no exception. In fact, the false ego can really like spiritual life. There's a lot here that I think I can use. This is kind of the voice of the false ego. And, we get to sit on a seat and talk into a microphone, or we get to, we get to sing kirtan in such a way that maybe somehow the false ego can say, okay, do it in this way. Of course, there's no question that we're benefiting immensely, spiritually, anytime we utter the holy name. Doesn't matter what the spirit is. But at the same time, the false ego can kind of snatch that. Or the false ego can make us attached to various positions or posts of service that we receive in spiritual life. And one way to combat this, if this is helpful, is that we're always asked to balance humility and confidence in spiritual life. And we may say, how to do that? How can I be humble and also confident on the spiritual path? It's a little strange, right? So you usually find, some variation where the confidence is too high and the humility is not quite there, or that the humility is so strong that we become very, very sheepish. Oh, I'm not qualified to do anything. I can't do this service. No, I'm going to go hide, right? So there are these different kind of dynamics. And so how to balance these? So this is something that I heard that was very inspiring, that we can be confident in the quality and caliber of the mercy that we have received. You can say, Hare Krishna, I have received the best mercy in the world. These teachings are incomparable. This process is incomparable. The mercy of the devotees is incomparable. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. The devotees are just like desire trees, full of compassion. Okay, and then here comes the humility. So the humility is that without that mercy, what do I have? What do I have? There's very, very little that I have. And Srila Prabhupada explains that all of our good qualities are like zeros. But if we add Krishna, we have that mercy, that's like placing a 1 in front of the zeros, and suddenly there's something very substantial there. So we try to strike that balance, to be confident enough that we can serve, because sometimes humility actually takes the form of, okay, I'm being offered this opportunity. I'm going to take it and trust Krishna and seek the mercy of the devotees. So sometimes it's like that. But humility always remains in remembering that without that mercy, that we have very little. So, thank you, Guru. I hope that addressed some of the questions. It's a big conversation. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Guru. Thank you for your nice class. So I just have a small question about the impersonal aspect and the personal aspect of the Lord. So as you were discussing in the purport, also Srila Prabhupada mentions that if we offer, right now the offering is going on to the deities. So sometimes there are some thoughts that they think that we are offering because we like it, and just to fulfill our desire to enjoy, we are trying to do that. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah. Thank you so much. So yes, this may be the case. This may be the case, especially early on. For as long as we have attachments, for as long as we have things that we maybe prefer a little bit. I like this more than that. Then in that sense, we may have some kind of slant toward what we offer to Krishna or how we try to serve Krishna. And it's understood, especially in the early stages on the path, that this is actually all right, because Srila Prabhupada gives us this yukta vairagya principle, that whatever you have, whatever you're able to offer, you offer to Krishna. Whatever you do it for Krishna. And you like to sing kirtan, Prabhu. You're a musician. Jai Draupadi Mataji likes to cook. So we all have qualities that we can offer. Not that it's immediately. Actually, Krishna doesn't want that. Krishna wants us to offer who we are. But to address your specific question, which I understand is a little bit different, is that in the beginning we may offer Krishna what we like. And actually, think about it. Think about it with a guest. If a very honored guest, if Prabhu came over to our house, I might say, I really like dates. I think that dates are a very nice fruit. And I would like to offer these dates to Krishna and then give them to Prabhu when he comes over, because I think that dates are nice. So, okay, yeah, it may be a little bit based on what I like, and I might eat a few too once they're kind of, served out. But at the same time, we're kind of offering what we have learned is a nice thing to offer, what we have found to be something enchanting or nice in this world. So yes, our preference is still there, but we can also in time learn more about what Krishna likes. So we get that opportunity through what's that song? That song, the Boga Arti song, right? Yeah. So all of these beautiful examples of these preparations. Okay, we're learning about what the Lord likes. We're learning about what the Lord likes, and then maybe we may be inspired. Okay, I'm going to try to make some of those preparations. Or we read in Krishna's pastimes about the wonderful preparations that he has with the cowherd boys. Or we learn that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu likes shukta, right? So these different things. So we may say, okay, as we learn more, and how do we learn more? We learn more from those who know. So like Srila Prabhupada, from the great devotees. So like if I wanted to offer something pleasing for a new guest, I might call up the friend of that guest, someone who knows them very well, and say, what did they like? What did they take? What did they not take? So in that way, as our understanding of Krishna becomes more and more personal, informed by the beautiful details given in the scriptures, we may be able to then think more about what it is that Krishna would like, what Krishna would want. But in the meanwhile, Krishna is giving us, through his mercy, the opportunity to also kind of purify our own desires, our own things that we tend to be attached to in one way or another. That's his mercy, that as long as it's vegetarian, as long as it's leaf, flower, fruit, water, like that, then we can offer something that we think is nice, and we can, in the process of doing so, remember that it's all coming from Krishna also. So we're offering it back. We're offering it back to him.
So the question is a little bit further that,
Please.
so the deities have no interest in any offerings that we are making. The deities have no interest in the offering. We are making an offering just for our own sake. It's not so that kind of mentality of complete impersonalism, that there is no real person behind with any interest to receive anything.
Yes.
So to that, what would you want to respond?
It's a very good point. Yeah. That sometimes the deities, we can approach the deities in the mood of please make this prasad so I can, something like that. So so the actual act of offering, the deities, they don't need the apple or whatever it is that we're offering. They don't require that. Krishna is producing. How many apples are growing on the trees right now as I'm speaking? How many apples now? Now there's more apples like that. Krishna is constantly producing. So at the same time, what he wants, the only thing we can actually give Krishna that he doesn't already have is our love. So in that way, hopefully we can try our best to infuse the offering with love. And that way we're actually offering something substantial, something that Krishna is wanting. And Krishna does want it. Krishna does want it. It's not that Krishna is above desire. When it comes to the affection of his devotees, Krishna does want it, because Krishna is the original personalist. We're trying to be personalists, but Krishna knows each and every one of us and is eager for that love that we can offer. And if we can develop our love by making those offerings, then we're offering something substantial to the deity. I don't know if that address the point? Thank you, Harinamana.
I would say that that's a detail of a general principle. And the general principle is, do I do what I want for Krishna, or do I do what Krishna wants? And that's obviously a higher standard. We see in Prabhupada's dealings with his disciples, very often he would say to them, what would you like to do for Krishna? What would you like to do for Krishna? But if we go a little bit further, and we see in his dealings with those devotees who are more surrendered, he said to Tamal Krishna Raj, go to China. No, I don't want to go. Or to Harikesh, stop being my secretary and go to Eastern Europe. So we are at least, I think, striving for that platform where instead of doing what I want for Krishna, let me do what Krishna wants, even though I may not like it.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you. Yeah, to your point, Prabhu, I one time asked my spiritual master, for whatever reason, I was thinking like I can get some big instruction from him. So we were in New York on the subway, and I said, is there any particular service, anything that you would be happy if I did, anything that would be pleasing to you? And I was kind of thinking, I'll get this big instruction. And then he smiled and he said, well, what do you like to do? So as you said, Prabhu, I mean, that's evidence of kind of my, level right now. So the devotees will deal with us accordingly. But yeah, ultimately, those devotees who are very surrendered, they do whatever the need is, whatever they're called upon to do.
Anyone has any further questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna. First of all, wonderful class, Prabhuji. I really like the point you mentioned that he's not an ordinary person, but still he's a person. So thank you for that. So my question is not related to the class, but related to your profession. As I was reading your bio, that you are a hospital chaplain. So it's just an assumption. I'm assuming that most of the people that you deal with are towards the end of their life. And probably they are more Christians than other religion. So in Bhagavad Gita, and right in second chapter, it was like, I'm not the body, I'm spirit, soul, right? So I wanted to know, like, how do you apply our spiritual practice or teachings of Bhagavad Gita in your day-to-day dealings with these people?
Thank you for the question, Mataji. Yeah, you're correct that that definitely in that field of work you do connect with a lot of people who are approaching the end of their life, or who are right there at the end of their life. And sometimes in certain hospitals where I work, that's the only time they call you. You have a pager, and when someone's leaving their body, they call you, and that's when you walk in the room. So it can be very, very intense. And the way in which I have found that, our teachings can be applied really very much across the board in terms of dealing with those individuals. If they're alert and aware enough to carry on some conversation, you may directly speak about what they're experiencing, give them a chance to share. And it may be physical at first, oh, this hurts, or I'm in pain, or I'm feeling this. But in time, they'll start to get into, I'm feeling this, or I'm thinking of this, or I'm feeling the presence of, like that. So, and then we start to get an opportunity to connect more on the level of the soul. First it's the body. In medicine they call the initial concern. Oh, my leg hurts so badly. And this applies to even non-end-of-life situations. Oh, my leg hurts. But then if you get to know that person a little bit more, they might start to say, I'm so upset that my son hasn't called me while I'm here, right? So then we're getting into more their emotions, their personhood. And then they may say, but I feel grateful that I'm feeling the presence of God while I'm here. Then all of a sudden you're getting into the level of the soul. So one way in which just can be applied very much across the board is regardless of whether the person's willing to engage on that level, they may only talk about the initial concern, or they may be so near the end of life that they're unable to outwardly engage. But in being with that person and trying our best, although we don't have that realization, we're not on that Brahma Buddha level that I'm like seeing the spirit soul, but Srila Prabhupada has given the teachings that each and every one of us is a spirit soul. So that at least theoretically, when we're dealing with someone, if we can remember this person is a spirit soul, and in trying to talk to them and connect to them, I do have faith that there's some subtle kind of exchange that goes on there. Even with going back to the cashier at the grocery store, even if you're speaking with someone and at the same time thinking, this is a spirit soul, this person is part and parcel of Krishna, is very dear to Krishna, they feel something in the exchange. So that's one way in which it can be applied. And then, yeah, we could share more stories at some point, but that's definitely one way that's very practical that we can engage with the teachings and also give that person a chance to express who they are on the deepest level. Ask them what's most meaningful for them in their life. Jai Shri Radha Shyam Sundar, Shri Kornitai, Srila Prabhupada. And if you try to actually find out what is most meaningful to someone, chances are you're going to get closer and closer to this level of something eternal. So that's a good practice for us if we're able to connect with somebody. Try to find out what's most dear to them and most meaningful to them.
May I ask a question based on your experience as a chaplain in dealing with a lot of different religious theologies? So when Prabhupada spoke on this verse, he was very heavy. He said that God is not a man and man is not a God. But in the Christian theology, they have Lord Jesus as God. So my question is, I'd like to hear if you've had experience, because you're administering to people who are Christians, certainly, and at a very important juncture in their life. How do you personally deal with or have you had the experience of personally dealing with this idea that, well, Christ is God?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, definitely, dealing with people of all different backgrounds, but of course you find many are of Christian faith. And yeah, we have definitely engaged on this topic before, the idea that Christ is God. And yeah, sometimes I have not combated that understanding. Sometimes I just kind of let that be. But when the discussion goes a little deeper, sometimes we're able to share in terms of you find that usually the understanding, if someone really unpacks it, is a little bit more complex also, that they come to see that he's also a person who has been empowered by God the Father, which is much more aligned with our understanding. So yeah, and I've seen actually people go through their own kind of back and forth with that as well. That sometimes people will tell me, I used to think of Christ as God, but now I think of him just as the Son, not just, but I think of him as the Son of God. So what I find is that if people are speaking about Christ, we emphasize also his teachings, to love one another, to love God with one's heart, mind, and soul. So in that way, we're able to kind of find that universal kind of ground. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's thank you for it's a very interesting question you asked, and definitely these things do come up. I usually try to make it more about their sharing about God, because then you see that their consciousness is just right there. Thank you. Any further thoughts, questions?
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much.
for explaining such a simple and powerful way.